Redditors, what is your earliest memory? Walking up to a stranger on a ferry that was wearing the same, very obscure, jumper as my dad, hugging him and loudly proclaiming, "Daddy, I saw a dolphin." I'm about 3½ years old, and my dad wakes me up in the absolute dead of night and tells me to come down and watch TV. My mom's like, "Just let the kid sleep," but my dad says, "No, this is important." Turns out, some guys have just landed on the moon and are about to go for a walk. Can't remember the age this happened, but I remember feeling really sick for some unspecific reason. I told my mom and she went out to grab medicine for me at the local pharmacy. I really can't remember what symptoms I was feeling or what she intended to grab to help me. While she was out, I started feeling much better and felt bad that I made her go out and get medicine. I remember waiting for what felt like an eternity, sitting at the bottom of our stairs by our front door waiting for her to get home. When she got home, I apologized because I told her I felt okay again and felt bad she ran out just to get something to help me. She didn't care. She was just happy that I didn't feel sick anymore. Standing in my mom's room, asking her what my name was. When I was little, I guess I got pink eye. My mother was trying to get me to calm down to have eye drops, but I think I took it as a game for her to chase me. The only thing I really remember is my mother grabbing me and slam dunking me onto the carpet. She held me down with her forearm and forced some eye drops in my eye while I just was still laughing and screaming. I would like to believe that my mom RKO'd so hard I gained consciousness. My mom was spoon-feeding my infant brother and she dropped the spoon in a bowl of soup. I thought it was gone forever in an infinite ocean of soup, and I was amazed when she got it back out. I think that was me learning object permanence. I was 3 years old and playing with a toy cow in the living room of my old house. My grandma's poodle was there and I have no idea why, but I remember putting the cow down and sticking my pinky in the dog's mouth. He lightly nipped me and I remember feeling how pointy his teeth were. I wasn't hurt, just startled enough to learn not to do dumb shit like that again. My parents took me to the park. Now, my mom is terrified of birds, including ducks. As in, she will scream if they come near her. I remember suddenly a flock of ducks, swans, geese, all of those water birds, suddenly coming towards us. My mom? She let go of my hand and ran off screaming. My dad went after my mom. Me? Well, I became duck food. Me picking my nose, looking around and not finding anything to wipe it with, and then sticking the booger back in. My dad watched the whole thing. He laughed. My sister had diving down the stairs when I was 2. Watched her from the bottom. She was fine, though. I would have between 2 to 3 years old. I had always remembered it as an out-of-body experience. I was at my grandma's house walking around the pool alone. I know, it didn't take long for Mum to find out and ban unsupervised visits with Grandma, and I fell in. I remember it as if I was reaching in and saving myself from drowning somehow. It's really hard to explain. I told Mum about this in the last few years and it turns out I was actually saving my brother from drowning, but it had also happened to me and she thinks I must have merged the memories somehow. This is kinda depressing, but my first clear memory is of my dad beating my mom until she fell on the kitchen floor. Then she got up and told me to get my doll and we got in the car and drove away from him. I was 3 at the most. Being told to go for a nap, I was around 2 to 3 at the time, and I refused because I wanted to keep playing and was being defiant. My dad repeatedly put me in my bed and said that I'll feel better if I lied down for a bit. I fell asleep and he woke me up 2 hours later. And shocker, I felt better. LOL. My 1 year younger than me cousin was watching me eat a lollipop and got so confused when it was inside my mouth. She kept asking where it went. Then I took it out and showed her. Then I put it back in my mouth and she asked me again where it went. I was 3. She's still my best friend 39 years later. I woke up in my parents' bedroom. The window was brighter than usual, so I looked outside. It was snowing. CAEI. Alright, one of my best friends tells this story to anyone that will listen, but my earliest memory is of sitting on the bathroom floor while my mom was changing her tampon. My dad came in and yelled, "What are you doing?" And she said, "He's not going to remember." Earliest clear memory. I think the earliest was of a drawing of a goat on a wall. I was too little and used to crawl on all 4 limbs. I remember my dad took me to a clinic. There I noticed someone crossing the legs for the first time. He was reading a newspaper. I was damn confused about his legs. I wanted to ask my dad, but had no words. Peeing on my sister's bed and blaming it on the dog. I remember my first dream. I was young, around 3 maybe, and I had a dream a dog attacked me and nobody would help. I was in my crib and my brother was talking to me, but I couldn't speak well enough to understand him. I remember being mad because he could climb in and out of the crib and I couldn't. I remember my grandfather letting me sit on his lap while he played poker with a bunch of other grandpas, and they let me eat all of the cookies I wanted. They smoked cigars and made faces at me. I remember thinking it was hilarious. All of my earliest memories are of him. He was always happy to see me and would pick me up and laugh. He died when I was 4. I faked swallowing a rock when I was 5 to leave kindergarten, then I confessed when my mom and I were at the hospital about to get X-ray. Standing on the couch and consciously shitting my diaper. Getting a Postman Pat beanbag chair at my Pizza Hut birthday party. Life has never been so good since. Mine's so embarrassing. I remember running down the hall to the bathroom because I had wet my mom's bed. I can distinctly see the hallway and the light was on at the end of the hall in the bathroom. We only lived there between me being 3 to 4, so it was sometime around that age. Then my next one is sneaking out of my uncle's house, where we were staying temporarily after leaving the place mentioned above, sneaking into my grandparents' house and trying to turn the TV on in the living room. The houses were like 20 feet apart, 2 trailer houses. When my mom was pregnant with my brother, I could then beat her in races from the car to the front door. My little brother's funeral. It was my 5th birthday. My mom had made me a really cool cake with an action figure in it. Everyone left the cake alone in the kitchen while we went out to eat dinner at Red Robin. By the time we got home, my dogs, a collie, and Golden Doodle, had eaten half the cake. I was 2 years old and wouldn't allow my cousin to go near my baby sister. She was my sister. Sitting in one of those chairs where they feed you. I remember just being happy, and pure. My mom was feeding me, and my dad was sitting on a couch across me. I remember them smiling, and I remember being filled with love, no actual thoughts, just pure love for my parents. I think about that once in a while. I was 2 years old and having kidney surgery, and I woke up halfway through my surgery because the epidural came out of my spine. They had snapped the needle in my spine on the first go, which was great. I remember seeing them working on me, freaking out, as you do, and I managed to rip the line out of my hand which was pissing out with blood. I remember the excruciating pain that came with all of it as the epidural wore off. I remember pretty much my entire hospital stay, and damn near everything since then. I was 4, my brother was 1, his diaper leaked poop on the ground and I touched it cause I thought it was chocolate. One of my relatives brought that up once in a family gathering when I was in grade 3 and I stormed to the roof, locked myself there and kept hysterically crying like someone close to me died. They still bring both incidents up but very rarely and laugh about it. TBH, this makes me super embarrassed to this day. Mine is a dream. I was having a lightsaber duel with Darth Maul on like a 2.5-inch beam above a pitch black void. I was at the end of the beam. If I move back any further I fall into the void. I manage to trip him and he falls. Edit. I killed my favorite character. I was still in a pram. I remember it more like a dream than any of my other memories, so I think it's my earliest. We were walking across a path of stones in a park, I think. Possibly in the town/city I was born in. I'm told this memory was when I lost my favorite teddy bear. And I probably only remember it because I was unhappy I couldn't find him. We eventually found him in a tree. I was really little. In my memory my arm and hand and fingers look like a young toddler's body. I reached out with my finger to pat the pretty spider, with a red patch on its back. I remember my mum gasping with horror and pulling me upwards and backwards. Trying to drink a cup of water while lying flat on my back in the crib. Water splashed all over my face, of course, and while I was pre-verbal, my thoughts can be best translated as, well, let's not do that again. The midwife coming to visit my mum who was pregnant with my sister. She kindly gifted me a lip balm. I was about 2, so I don't know why a lip balm seemed an appropriate gift. I just remember the lip balm tasted like shit. Gulf War, alarm going off and being sealed inside a baby hazmat suit since you can't put gas masks on babies. Thumbs down. The Challenger explosion. More specifically, the Punky Brewster episode about the Challenger explosion. That episode, and the one where her friend got trapped in the abandoned refrigerator and almost died. I was 3 when those aired, and I remember watching them with vivid clarity. That show existed to traumatize children. Horrifically burning my arm when I was a small child left me wearing burn gloves for years afterwards. I thankfully don't remember the burning, but I do remember it being a pain in the ass to wash my hands when I was like 3. Beautiful, colorful feathers floating in a gorgeous blue and sunny sky. It's a happy memory. Apparently when I was 3 I saw chickens being slaughtered and freaked out big time. My earliest concrete memory is me backed into corner in the bathroom cowering in absolute terror as my mum advances on me with a look of red mist rage on her face. I'm starting therapy in the new year. Edit. Thank you very much to the kind soul who gave me a silver. That will become a nice memory. Also, thank you everybody for all the supportive comments. Walking into the living room where my parents and grandparents were sitting, staring them in the eye, and shitting on the carpet. Being swung very fast into the air and onto my dad's shoulders. I was 2 and had made friends with a baby swan, by grabbing its neck. Mama Swan wasn't having it and chased us out of the park. Edit for clarity, yes, he swung me up onto his shoulders so we could sprint out of the park with the swan on our heels. Fun fact, swans have good memories, and every time we went to the park in the year after, she chased us out all over again. What the fuck, you guys have good memories? I can only remember like one thing from my 1st/2nd year of primary school. 5/6 years old. I only remember it because for some reason the teacher was talking about a certain male appendage and asking the name of it. Not sure why they would have been talking about this, but they were. Of course the boys were all sausage. Willy. PP. Then this girl chimed in with the right answer. Weird as fuck thing to happen, and a weird as fuck thing to still remember. Probably not the earliest thing I remember, but I remember the little step/stage area at the front of the class that was only in that one class that was dedicated to the first 2-year levels of the school, so I can put a time period to it, whereas I can't remember anything else with a time period before that. Watching Cat in the Hat and resting my head against the arm of a chair. I was barely old enough to walk at the time. Oddly enough, I have very few memories from my childhood. It's to the point where I have no idea what my life was like back then. I was like 2 or 3 and my dad was watching Return of the Living Dead, so my earliest memory is an 80s punk/goth chick dancing naked on a tombstone. Kind of explains a few things I was into back in high school. 2 years old, Cedar Point, merry-go-round. I remember standing in front of a bookshelf and my shoes being too tight. During WW2 I was about 8 months old and couldn't walk or talk. I was put in my cot and was bored, so I worked out how to climb out of one corner of the cot. I slid down to the floor and crawled along the carpet to the stairs. The stairs had carpet held in place with brass rods. I climbed down 2 flights of stairs to the hall. The hall had cold linoleum on the floor. I crawled into the kitchen where my mother found me. She carried me upstairs and put me back into the cot, and she hid behind the bedroom door. I climbed out of the cot immediately. She was laughing and saying things that I couldn't understand. She put me back in the cot and I went to sleep. When I grew up I became a mountain climber. I have climbed many of the mountains in my country. I have met Sir Edmund Hillary several times. He was in my club, and climbed Mt. Everest and drove to the South Pole in a farm tractor, which took him 3 months. Middle of the night. /3yo at the time. Woke up and vomited in my bed and all over myself. Started crying because I got sick. It was gross, and I was afraid I would get in trouble if I woke everyone up by going to the bathroom. So, I sat there crying in my puke until it woke up Mom and she got me cleaned up. I was around 2-3 years old. My brother almost killed me when we were eating. I was in one of those feeding chairs and our mom went to the kitchen to prepare some food for us, and my brother took a big chunk of bread and shoved it into my throat. I started choking and crying and my mom did a Heimlich procedure on me. It was fun and I survived, haha. Getting hit unfortunately. My earliest memory is being in my mother's arms looking outside the window during a storm at night. I remember the rain falling down so heavy and the lightning flashing so bright. I remember looking at the rocks outside and clearly remember seeing a turtle climbing out of a puddle slowly. I remember my brother, playing with him at the apartment we lived in, etc. My mother doesn't believe me, but recently I was given some pictures that verify my memories, pictures I haven't been shown before, complicated family history. I believe I have memories that early because him and my father died before I was 2. It said your first earliest memory says a lot about who you are as a person. Needless to say, the replies on here are amazing. Shitting myself in kindergarten. I remember sitting in a chair and I shat myself. Worst part was the fact that we had lunch and I had to walk in my underwear to the table. Everybody was laughing at me and I was crying. Fuck. This one is hard to answer. As a person with memory problems, I do have several memories of me as a young child, but then it's like I time traveled until I was 9. The most memorable earliest memory is recording a lot of videos. I was 8 at the time. Most of them are and lost forever. The most memorable one is me drinking 5 bottles of some juice in one sitting. I swear I threw up after this. My cousin would join his legs together so it was like a slide. He'd put me in his lap and I'd slide. I remember doing that again and again till my aunt called us for dinner. I was 4. I don't have any other memories of him besides that one. He died when I was 5. He was 24. I feel like he's my guardian angel though, like he's always somewhere looking out for me. Appreciate your loved ones being close to you. What you have one day you might lose another. I was young. Uncertain of my age, but I knew I was young. Tiny. In a house I barely recognized. I'd woken up and just remember asking why to myself. It didn't make much sense. I was so curious. I looked outside and saw the tree in my backyard obscuring the sunlight, shining a sunbeam directly onto my dog Shuffles. I remember thinking how it looked so nice. Why did it look nice? The sun is hot. It just did. I walked into the living room. Mom and Dad were mumbling things I couldn't understand. The window was letting in more sunlight on the carpet near the TV. I remembered Shuffles. I laid down in the sunbeam and curled up. It felt nice. It felt peaceful. I remember thinking, yeah, that's why it looked nice. It is. My nose being bit off by a dog. While my mom was talking with some friends. Biting my neighbor's butt. We were 4 or 5 at the time, I think, because I got inspired by the movie Madagascar. My silly putty being thrown from the balcony to oblivion. I remember crying "Noo" as my older brother took it and tossed it over. I asked my mom when we had a balcony, and it was in an apartment we lived in when I was 2 Mos 1.5 YRS. My uncle throwing jello at my cheeks. My first memory is from when I was 3. I ran headfirst into a radiator. I don't remember much after that. Eating a fur-covered banana in a dog bed. I'm still a dog lover. Playing with an inflatable globe. That's probably why I'm not a flat earther. I remember coloring in a Lion King coloring book on the steps in front of my grandparents' house, and then throwing up. I was around 2 to 3 years old when I discovered a lighter. I figured out how to use it and lit our couch on fire. After that my mom came with a bucket of water and put the fire out while I just sat there, on the burning couch, laughing. And since then I have a fascination with lighting things on fire. My parents fighting. Well, it's pretty much all of my memories until I met my wife at 13. Thank you, love, love. My dad giving me a bath in a bucket. We'd ran away from my mom and were living in one of those tiny travel trailers. They got back together later and are still together now. I think I was close to 2 years old. Sitting in a stroller looking up at a canopy of leaves and the sun shining through. From pictures of the stroller I'd wager I had to have been about 3 years old. It is such a weird, insignificant moment to remember that clearly. I'm not 100% sure, but it was my birthday, can't remember what age, and my dad lifted me up to touch the colored decoration my parents put up for me. I was 3 and was meant to be in bed asleep, but I crept out and peeked through the banister rail while my dad watched the Elephant Man in the dark. Fucking terrifying. I climbed up a bunch of shelves in my parents' kitchen, Rugrats style, got a cup from the kitchen cabinet, filled it with water, put it in the microwave, and set the timer for like 5 minutes. I then took it out, took a sip, and blacked out. Parents now say I got severe burns all over my mouth. Edit. Forgot a few words lol. I've discussed this with my dad, so it can only be partially confirmed, part in parentheses is only partially confirmed. I'm sitting on a desk at his work, there were about 4 large desks in a line down the middle of the room, drinking an enormous Frosty that one of his co-workers had given me, extra large cup. A different memory at the same shop. A teenager is holding me while I do something to make a button, putting in the picture and plastic, maybe pulling the lever, on a huge cast iron electric/pneumatic button maker. There was a feed tube with all the button bases in the back. Sticking my plastic sword up Cinderella's dress when I was 2 at Disney World. Climbing a couch and putting an old flip phone in my mouth. Having smallpox. I was 1,5 yo. Edit. Chicken pox. Sorry, not a native speaker. Mine is really weird. I think I remember when I almost got molested. I was 3 and went to a wedding with my mom. Some guy started talking to me and took me to a room. I remember him locking the room and remember him getting on top of me, and I remember my mother raising hell on the other side of the door. He opened the door before anything happened as far as I remember. But my mother was screaming at everyone. She grabbed me and left. I never saw that house or those people again. She passed away when I was 11, but I told my father about it when I was a teenager. He couldn't believe I remembered that. Apparently the guy ran away and his mother begged my parents not to press charges. They all said nothing happened to me, so it's not a big deal. Memories are weird, I guess. My parents were throwing a party and a guy asked me how old I was. I very proudly held 2 fingers up as close to his face as I could. My mom bathing me in the sink at 2 years old. Climbing to a window to see what the ground looks like 2 stories up. Surprised I've survived for 16 years. My dad's feet. He was teaching me to hokey pokey. He died when I was 3, so it's one of my clearest memories of him. I remember running around the backyard barefoot and stepping on a bee. That bee was not happy. I remember when I was a toddler, taking a box of crayons and drawing all over the white leather sofa. Good times. I remember being out on a long pier, on a foggy day, being there with my family, and a crab suddenly appeared and scurried right towards me. I think my uncle had kicked over a crab bucket. It was on a visit to Maryland when I was 3. Fuck crabs.